share with us. We're so thankful that she's here. Give it up for Teresa Kenney.
Thanks, Ryan, for that great introduction. All right, thank you so much for having me here. This is such a wonderful crowd, and you would have thought like I was going to talk about something like sex to think you could get this many young people to a meeting like this. So if you thought I was talking about sex, I am. So came to the right place. All right, so I'm going to talk tonight about basically my life. You know, I mean, this is my personal story. All of us have like a journey, and this is mine. I'm 42 years old, and I ended up at a place called Pope Paul VI Institute, and I really think God planned me to be there. So I'm really excited just to share that with you and what we do at Pope Paul VI Institute, a little bit about my life. Yeah, so let's get started.
Hey, Teresa.
Yeah.
Make sure you're talking nice and close to the microphone.
You bet.
Thanks.
All right. A lot of what I'm talking about tonight is going to revolve around theology of the body. So as you saw on the beginning slide, I'm going to talk about origin, purpose, and destiny. To me, this is all about theology of the body, and I hope to give you a glimpse of what theology of the body is tonight and want you to learn more about it. Because if you don't delve into theology of the body, I feel like truly the heart of natural family planning, of Humanae Vitae, and the church's teaching on contraception really won't be lived out in your heart as much as it really can be. So that's really my purpose tonight. So this is me. This is my origin. This is Teresa Hargis, born on July 25th, 1975. July 25th will become an important day as I go on in this presentation. I was born to a great family. And let's see if I can get this move. Things to know about me. So these are just three kind of fun things. If you are a Jane Austen fan, this will make sense to you. If you are not, you will think I am a retard or a dork or whatever. And I'm sorry, that's an 80s term. So, okay. So I prefer the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley to the 1995 one with Colin Firth. But I give kudos to Colin for my favorite ever fight scene with him and Hugh Grant in Bridget Jones' Diary. And for those who prefer the 1995 one and need to leave now, go ahead and go. I despise all people who put frosting from a can on a cake. Come on, people. All you need for amazing frosting is powdered sugar, milk, and butter. The stuff in the can is inedible. Never do it, and your life will be joyful. I played college soccer, and although I will not be in the Hall of Fame, I will be infamous for the player at Briarcliff College for having the most yellow cards, and yes, one red card, which I was thrown out of the game for. And yes, that is me in that picture. This is my family. I'm one of six, so I have 6 siblings. My 2 oldest brothers are quite a bit older than me. My oldest brother's about 52, almost 53. Chris and Rob Reynolds, and then my 4 siblings that are closest to me, Michael, me, Teresa, Kathy, my only sister, and my little brother, Johnny, who is here tonight, by the way. These are my parents, Gary and Ann Hargis. My dad was a convert. He was a Presbyterian convert to Catholicism. He converted about 9 years into their marriage. My parents are rock solid. I mean, as you get older, you will appreciate, those of you who have come from just a beautiful, rock-solid family, how wonderful that is and how important it is to your life. One of the things I learned in doing a lot of marriage prep and working with engaged couples is how important our family of origin is to how our marriages are lived out, and what a blessing it is to come from a family that is just solid in faith, solid and grounded and protected in their marriage, and the sacrament is so beautiful. And this is me and my siblings just now, basically. So when I was young, I was a good kid. I was that girl that everybody called the goody two-shoes girl. Yeah, I mean, I was. I liked to be good. I was the oldest. I kind of act like an oldest. I wasn't the oldest in my family, but I would act like the oldest because of kind of the nature of my personality. Some of the influencers in my life, my mom, My mom is an extremely devout woman, beautiful woman. She's here probably in her 70s. She always looked amazing for her age. She's just a beautiful woman inside and out. But she was the person that kind of interested me in being in the pro-life movement, basically. When I was younger, probably in 8th grade, high school, I started going to the abortion clinics with my mom. In Omaha, there was a couple abortion clinics, one that's not there anymore on about 51st and L Street. We would go there and we would pray peacefully with a group of people and priests to show that we wanted to support those women in prayer. And so that's one thing that we did together. Then amazingly, my parents sent me on an airplane to Croatia when I was 15 years old. My mom had gone to Medjugorje in the 1980s and decided one day there was an open spot on a pilgrimage to Medjugorje that she would send her 15-year-old daughter on a pilgrimage without her parents and in a great group of people, but pretty amazing. I mean, it's just astounding to me still that they had enough faith. That was at that time, at the breakout. The war basically happened within the next couple of months between Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina. So it was a really tumultuous time in that country. If everyone at that point in their life, or maybe in the next probably 5 years after that, could go on a pilgrimage, I truly think that most people would stay in their faith. Our parents, many times for us, give us our faith, but you need to own your faith at some point, right? And to me, to go outside of that and to a foreign country, and fly across the world to own my faith was really pivotal. And the other thing is that I always knew that the Blessed Mother Mary was going to be with me forever. She remained my sole kind of confidant, my prayer partner, my intercessor to our Lord, and continues to this day to be that. And I'm forever grateful for my parents for having the trust and faith that I could go there and come back alive. Another thing that happened to me a couple of years later is that John Paul II came to Denver for the 8th World Youth Day. That was in 1993. And I went to an all-girls high school here in Omaha called Marion. And I was able to get a group of kids together to go to World Youth Day. And it was such a fun trip. I mean, I don't think you ever realize what sort of an impact spiritually that will have on you at the time. But I tell you what, to this day, I'm so grateful to have been in St. John Paul II's presence. And every time I see the man in pictures or in videos, my heart swells. And I think for a lot of us in the generation that I lived in, we have that just incredible love for this man. But those are a couple pictures from there. I'm incredibly grateful for that experience to be there at Cherry Creek with hundreds of thousands of other young people for World Youth Day. So I became a nurse. I went to Briarcliff College. Like I said, I played college after going to Marion, played college soccer, and then I decided to become a nurse. Well, this woman was really my inspiration for becoming a nurse. Mother Teresa, the example of this woman's humility and the beauty that she shows in her spirit, in her faith. There's not necessarily physically not a beautiful person, but when you look at her, this woman is beautiful beyond a doubt. And the way she cared for people, the way she treated each individual person as if she was meeting Jesus Christ inspired me beyond belief. In college, I wrote an entire paper on her, and she was truly my inspiration for becoming a nurse. I'll talk about this in a little bit. One other thing I want to share with you about my college experience. So I mentioned, I got into the pro-life movement early on. That was important to me. When I was playing college soccer, I was a freshman. There was a girl on my team who was a senior. And through a mutual friend, I had found out this girl was pregnant. And it was a very kind of short notice thing, but I found out that she was pregnant and she was going to Omaha. We were in Sioux City. Briarcliff is in Sioux City, Iowa. She was going to Omaha, Nebraska to have an abortion. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I've never been in this situation. I prayed peacefully, but I've never been in a situation where I could actually have a personal influence in someone's life who is contemplating an abortion. And I didn't know this girl very well at all. And again, it was like I found out on a Friday and the next morning she was going. So the only thing I knew to do was to go and pray, like I had always done with my mom, the years before. So I went to that abortion clinic, 51st and L Street, very early in the morning. I'll never forget, it was dark. There was a large group of us there praying, and I waited, wondering if this girl would show up. Her name was Jenny. And, time went on and we're praying, and I look up, and the way they had it, they always kind of kept those women coming in a back way so they didn't have to cross through the people that were praying. And I see her coming up to the door of the entrance of this abortion clinic. And, I'm overcome, and I just yell out, Jenny. I yell. She's like 30 feet away from me. I yell her name, Jenny. And she looks at me. She turns, she stops, and she looks at me. And there's that moment we have this I acknowledge, I know who you are, and she sees, who I am. And that was it. 10 people, which were not from my group, surrounded me. And they were security guards from the abortion clinic. So at that time, they had a lot of security personnel kind of monitoring. There was this line you couldn't cross. Apparently I crossed it. And all of these people swarmed me. And that was it. She went in and apparently had the abortion. So that was really devastating to me at the time. She graduated. I never saw her, for a couple years after that. But when I was a senior, she came back to one of our last soccer games. And when she came, she had a 9-month-old baby with her, a little boy. And after the game, she came up to me and she's like, Teresa, I'm so glad to see you. I want you to meet my son, Zachary. And she put that baby in my arms. And I thought, that was it. I did have an influence on her. She didn't save the first child, but something changed in her heart. Me showing up, being there, something changed in her heart. And she wanted me to know, I had this baby. And, that kept me, inspired and passionate that I got to show up. I got to show up for women. This is just a really great quote from John Paul II. This was at Denver. This is at Cherry Creek. But again, I think this is truly our culture right now. So as I read this, just think about what's going on in our culture and how we can have an influence. And he was really speaking, if I could read the whole thing, it would be amazing. But he was really speaking to us. You guys have the power as the youth to make a difference in this culture. This marvelous world, so loved by the Father that he sent his only Son for its salvation, is the theater of a never-ending battle being waged for our dignity and identity as free spiritual beings. This struggle parallels the apocalyptic combat described in the first reading of this Mass. Death battles against life. A culture of death seeks to impose itself on our desire to live and live to the full. There are those who reject the light of life, preferring the fruitless works of darkness. Their harvest is injustice, discrimination, exploitation, deceit, violence. In every age, a measure of their apparent success is the death of the innocents. In our own century, as at no other time in history, the culture of death has assumed a social and institutional form of legality to justify the most horrible crimes against humanity: genocide, final solutions, ethnic cleansings, and the massive taking of lives of human beings even before they are born, or before they reach the point of natural death. So this led to my purpose. When I graduated from Briarcliff College, I was told I should not get into reproductive health care. I should not get into women's health care because I was staunchly pro-life. And you know what I said to myself? Come on. There's got to be people on the other side of this. Who else is going to do it? So I went on to do a women's health nurse practitioner program at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, a secular college, but my education was great. And really, there wasn't a lot of issues I had to deal with. I had to find my own preceptors. I had to exclude myself from things that I did not want to participate in due to my values and ethics. But honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal. There is a lot of support for people who choose to go into reproductive health care and who want to do it and stay true to their values. So if anybody out there thinks there's not support, there is. You just have to be in the right place, and you have to ask for it. So I work at Pope Paul VI Institute on 69th and Mercy Road. If you didn't know where we were, we're right a little bit east of Bergen Mercy Hospital, up from Exarban Village. And it's a wonderful place. I've been there for 17 years. This is me. I had won an award a couple of years ago, very surprisingly, for an Omaha Nursing Award that was in Omaha Magazine. I've been there for 17 years, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of women about their life. Truly, what I do is a personal relationship with human beings. And I really think that the more I learn about life in general, that if I don't engage in relationship with people, then I really cannot influence people. It's not about me telling people what's right or wrong. It's about relationship and about making people feel that they're loved and that they have a genuine dignity that needs to be supported. I, the last 5 years, also have now started working part-time for Sancta Familia Medical Apostolate, another wonderful Catholic organization whose mission is to provide great Catholic health care. We're at 108th and Burt Circle. We provide family practice there, pediatrics, chiropractic, women's health care. So I do the Pope Paul VI naprotechnology there. That's been a great blessing. I only put this because that's Dr. Pierre. He's kind of a fun jokester type of guy. So it's a fun place to work too. So this is what I do for a living. I'm all involved in sex and menstrual cycles and reproduction and fertility, and I love it. I work with couples who are having problems with their menstrual cycles, who are trying to get pregnant, who are learning about their bodies, learning about their fertility. This is true empowerment. This is true education. We are a paradigm shift from the women's health world that we exist in. This is truly where women's health should always start. A woman needs to understand her body. A man needs to understand his body. A man needs to understand a woman's body. The point is, most of us will get married. And so if we don't understand this, we are missing the biggest point of our entire lives, since most of us will want to get married and actually have a family someday. This is so important. And it starts with, again, just a true feminism, the feminine genius of knowing your body and understanding it. And that's what I'm passionate about, women and couples learning about this. So the basics is that, I work with the Creighton model system, which was developed by Dr. Thomas Hilgers. It's a standardization of the Billings ovulation method. We call it a mucus-only method. Meaning that we look at one biological marker that the woman creates that tells a woman's body when she ovulates, and that's cervical mucus. It's super important because the guys have something called sperm, and sperm have to swim. And you cannot swim in a pool without water. So you have to have mucus in order for new life to happen and our world to continue to have people in it. It's super important, but most women go their entire lives without understanding what this natural vaginal discharge is that happens every time they go through a menstrual cycle. It's the main event. The period is just the after event. No big deal, right? The bleed, no big deal. Ovulation is the main event. And just like the period is a biological marker that tells us what our body's doing, the discharge that a woman makes tells her what her body is doing, which is really important. It's the main thing that tells a woman that she can be a mother. And so we all got to learn this as women. And so this is one way to do it. This is the Creighton model system. This is an example of a chart, basically, that shows, when women would have her period, basically, then the green days are essentially, she's not noticing any discharge, she's having dryness. And then as she approaches ovulation, which for most women who have a regular menstrual cycle, which is once a month, she's going to start creating a discharge somewhere in the middle of that time. That discharge becomes really watery, it becomes really slippery, it becomes really stretchy, it becomes very clear. It's like a hydrogel. Again, it's like water, so sperm can swim in it. And then it kind of is like a valve. I mean, it's kind of like water turning on, and because of the hormone play in this, it cranks off as soon as the hormone progesterone starts being produced after that egg is released. It's really, really like complex. And the egg itself only lives for 12 to 24 hours. So it's a really short window that actually women can get pregnant in. And if you know this, either one, you're going to be able to get pregnant when you want to, or two, you can space out your family when you're married and have the amount of children that you would like to, that God's calling you to, and you're discerning that with your spouse. It's super effective, actually. But, I mean, there is a key. It takes motivation, and it takes people actually understanding it and living it out and breathing it. This is just a diagram of the hormones. The two main ovarian hormones are estrogen and progesterone. You know, I'm not going to go into the whole system, but basically estrogen is the key hormone that produces cervical mucus. That rises as the woman releases her egg, and so she's going to see that discharge as the estrogen gets really, really high. But after that egg is released, the body starts producing a hormone that gets ready for pregnancy. It's the progestational hormone, and that's called progesterone. And that goes very high, and that shuts off any ability for a woman to be able to get pregnant anymore. So couples can use this system, the Creighton model system, to either achieve or avoid pregnancy. So it's all based on a person knowing each and every day whether she is fertile or infertile. And she knows it every single day. If she's charting and she's doing it well, she knows every single day whether it's possible for her to have a baby or not. I think it's pretty incredible. And this is how effective it is. So for achieving pregnancy, in the first cycle, for couples who actually know when they are fertile, 76% of them with normal fertility will get pregnant. By the sixth cycle, almost 100% have gotten pregnant, again with normal fertility, just knowing those days. If you're avoiding pregnancy, studies have shown that we have done on the Creighton model system that's 99% effective at avoiding pregnancy, typical use being close to 97%. So it's really effective, basically just as effective as any other birth control on the market. So it's pretty cool. So if any of you are in medical school right now, you will not hear this, right? Like in your textbooks, they're still saying like the abstinence-only method or the rhythm method is 20 to 35% ineffective. You will not hear this. There's a movement going on for medical schools to get this information, to get the current research and this information into the schools, into the textbooks, but you know, it takes work. It takes us, people who know about this, speaking up. But then after the Creighton model system was developed, what Dr. Thomas Hilgers found out is these charts were basically like gold mines to him in terms of a gynecological record. So he started noticing patterns that he could pick up in the chart that he could find like in typical patients that he would see for premenstrual syndrome, for infertility, for polycystic ovarian syndrome, for people with hormone dysfunction, even someone with uterine cancer. So then the chart became an entire woman's health science, which we call NAPRO technology, or natural procreative technology. And that's the medical applications of using this chart to evaluate and diagnose and treat women's health problems. It's all cooperative to the woman's body. We never mask over, we never manipulate, we never use artificial hormones that put women at risk for dangerous side effects that birth control can cause. All right, this was my destiny. I, again, was born on July 25th, 1975. What's really important about July 25th, if you didn't know already, is it's the day that Pope Paul VI released the encyclical Humanae Vitae. So for that reason, I feel like I was meant to do this. Like I was meant to be talking about, you know, what's so important. This is my husband, Dan Kenney. And so we've been married for 17 years, and I've been working at Pope Paul VI for 17 years. And we've done what I call Catholic family planning. And here's our family. So Dan and I used to stand up and give engaged encounter talks, and at some point when it got to be 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, we started feeling a little bit irrelevant when we started talking about natural family planning. However, I would say, when Dan and I got married, or actually even before that, when we were engaged, both of us were on the same page. We wanted 6 to 8 kids. So there was no question we were going to have 8 kids. And we do. And I'm very blessed. I feel very blessed about that because I work with a lot of women who cannot have children, and it's very difficult for them. So I feel incredibly blessed about that. So there's my family, beautiful. But there's a lot of reality about, we're moving to calling natural family planning fertility awareness-based methods. But there's a lot of reality to it. Humanae Vitae gets to the heart of who we are as human beings. And at some point in my work at Pope Paul VI, it was probably about 10, maybe 8 to 10 years into it, I truly delved into the theology of the body of John Paul II. And that's where, you realize, I had been walking around with glasses that had fog on them. That's where the fog gets really cleared out. I had been in high schools talking about Humanae Vitae. I'd try to give my best kind of witness to this is why the church teaches you really can't use birth control, you can't separate the procreative and the unitive meetings. It just doesn't fly. It has to be here in the heart. And that's why St. John Paul II gave us the theology of the body. Because again, it's about origin, purpose, and destiny. It's who we are, created in the image and likeness of God, and how we live that out as human beings, mirroring who God is in the Trinity. The marital sacrament is basically just an image of God. The Trinity is something that we don't want to mess with, right? Nobody wants to take the Holy Spirit out of the Trinity. Nobody wants to take the life out of the marriage sacrament. Why? It falls apart. It's not who it is meant to be. It does not give the grace-filled love that is meant to be given to us as being created in the image and likeness of God, the love and the joy that God wants to bless us with. It's real. NFP stinks sometimes. It's really hard. It's about self-denial. It's about total self-gift. It's about the cross. And most of us here, if we go into that cross, at some point we'll say, this is not worth it. This is really hard. And at the same time, if you're living it in your heart, it will bring you great joy. It will bring you great intimacy. And it will make you realize that your spouse cannot fulfill you. That's something I learned really early on in my marriage with Dan. I knew he couldn't fulfill me. If you think you're going to get married and have this blissful kind of marriage where you get fulfilled by your partner in some ecstatic way, you are sorely mistaken. Fulfillment comes from God. Fulfillment comes from living out the cross and being aware of the total gift that God wants to bless us with. And it's about wanting to be in relationship with Him in the end. And that's really hard for us living here now. Really hard sometimes. But it's certainly worth it. If you get a chance, these are a few books that I love, or a couple of books. Sex Au Naturel by Patrick Coffin does a really great job showing the scriptural references that apply to Humanae Vitae and the church's teaching on birth control. Ed Suri has a great book called Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love. I love Fulton Sheen. That was one of the books that was up there was 3 to Get Married. It was one of the first books I read. It basically is theology of the body. Fulton Sheen puts things into pancakes and butter. He is able to take lofty theological concepts and just bring them down to my level. He's absolutely incredible. If you get a chance to read 3 to Get Married, please do. These are just a few examples of people that I know have lived out theology of the body. John Paul II, prayer joined with sacrifice constitutes the most powerful force in the history of man. Saint Gianna Brettamola, if you don't know her story, this woman is so beautiful. One cannot love without suffering or suffer without love. And my best friend from high school, Megan Macaulay Bover, lived out the theology of the body. This was a quote that she gave from a newspaper. Megan was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in her 4th pregnancy. It was a very horrible cancer. It was inflammatory breast cancer. And she really had to learn what theology of the body was. I'm learning to completely trust in God, Bover said. When you don't know what could happen to you even the next day or a year from now, you quickly learn that you have to trust, especially with the kids, because that's a big fear. I have to have this complete trust that other people in God will take care of things, and they have. Matt Bover is one of the speakers that Ryan brought in here. He's one of my best friends still. The reason why I bring them up is because Matt Bover, with his wife Megan, they had 4 children. She died 2 years after giving birth to that 4th child. She had to go through chemotherapy. Very similar to Saint Gianna, she chose to, wait and deliver her child safely before she did any aggressive treatment. She died 2 years after that child's birth. I was there at her bedside after she died. But what was beautiful to me is not just the experience of her trusting and giving up her children to God, basically, and her life, was what happened after. Matt remarried a beautiful girl named Emily, and they've had 4 more children. And a lot of people had a hard time with that. And talking to Matt, who's just the most humble, wonderful human being, it was not hard for him to fall in love again. And the reason is because the love that he had for his wife, who died of cancer, it had become purified. It had become agape. It had become divine. It was complete. And that's the reason why he was able to kind of, in some ways, go for a lesser love. I mean, it's not the right way to say it, but it is. Because their love was perfected. And my image of that is that when Megan was close to death, we all went out to ice cream with her and some high school friends. And she had an oxygen tank at that point. And after ice cream, she was really tired. And Matt came out, and he picked her up. And this girl, weighed probably 70 pounds at that point. She's probably 5'2", 5'3". And he carried her up the stairs. And I'll never forget that image. And I really knew, that's marriage. That is marriage. The gift of self. It wasn't about romance anymore. We don't know what's going to happen to us. That was true marriage, lived out on earth. That's true theology of the body. Here's some of the places I like to look for just for information. I'm just going to leave that up there while you guys glance at that, but I'd really like to open it up to some questions now, because I know somebody has got a good question out here. Absolutely. Yes, so the question was, does Pope Paul VI Institute and their services, are they covered by regular health insurance, particularly Blue Cross Blue Shield? So we are a regular obstetrical and gynecological clinic. We see patients for regular GYN care, for annual pap smears. We do obstetrical care there, so we deliver babies. We've got a new physician, Dr. Teresa Hilders, who's Dr. Thomas Hilders' daughter, and I know she's here tonight. There she is. Back there, and Dr. Catherine Keefe is here too. So we provide the full spectrum of regular OB GYN care, but as mentioned by Father Tobias, we are world renowned for our women's health care, and people come from all over the country to see us. And so we treat a lot of patients across the country. Many of those women are seeking infertility services. Many of them have severe pelvic pain and disorders like endometriosis, and they are not getting help. There's truly what we call a war on women. These women are being told, just take the pill, just take the pill. There's nothing I can do with you, just take the pill. And women are getting smarter. They know that's not the right answer. And so we offer them full treatment and cure, hopefully, for their disease. This is really about treating the underlying issue, not about masking over it. It's a complete paradigm shift. It's the way all medicine should work, right? Finding the underlying cause, treating it, but it doesn't. And particularly in women's health, it's a complete disaster in terms of masking over disease. So if you're in the doctor's office and someone asks you if you should take the pill for a health issue, you ask them why. Why should I suppress my natural body and take a pill that causes heart attack, stroke, depression, decrease in sex drive, and all sorts of other nuisance side effects? Go ahead.
How do you explain NFP to somebody who has no background in religion or anything besides contraception?
Right. The question was, how do you explain NFP to someone who's secular, basically, who has no like religious reason to be using NFP? So in that sense, like then we go green, right? We go organic. I mean, how many people care about like not putting hormones in their food? Everybody, like these days, like everybody knows you shouldn't eat like hamburger that's all like beefed up with hormones and antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. So we go green with them. And it works. I mean, you're going to find, like, get on the internet and go on YouTube and just find all of the secular people that are talking about fertility awareness things like apps and devices and all sorts of things because they know that hormones are not good for their body. And they're not. They're not. Like, we need to really wake up, people. They're not good. In the sense of destroying kind of health and the sense of destroying environment. If we care about the environment, if we care about that stuff, we really have to take a really strong look at hormones. But so, you know, you go green with them, talk about fertility awareness, and then you can talk about some of the kind of intimacy factors there. There really is truly, if a woman is available to a man all the time when she is on birth control, I mean, the reason why sometimes we're attracted to someone, it's about the chase, inevitably. So if a woman is always available to a man sexually, that's not really attractive. There's a lot of pheromones, there's a lot of natural things that occur in a woman's body that allow a man to be attracted to her. That's the way God intended it. And you go on birth control, you are shutting that down. Like, you're shutting down your natural pheromones that are getting guys to come over to you. And they've done studies on that, multiple studies. So you can really kind of go there with that in terms of kind of understanding the natural realm of fertility and wanting to have sex drive. Birth control that has hormones kills sex drive. And it also, I mean, recent studies have shown that it increases depression rates up to 25%. I don't think anyone wants to sign up for that. So you can really go there with the side effects of birth control and the going green element.
One more question.
I recently read an article saying all of the side effects, like infertility and cancers and stuff, by birth control are false and made up. Is that just propaganda, or like what's going on?
What do you think?
I think it's propaganda, but I don't know how to argue that.
Well, I mean, if you're in medicine, you come to find out that you can make a study say whatever you want it to say. But the research is out there. There is no doubt, and there's no necessarily strong claim that birth control does not cause breast cancer. It does. It increases the rates of breast cancer. It also significantly increases the risk of blood clots. Yes, it would be propaganda to say that it does not cause those things. There's definitely people, what will happen is that, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies out there. If somebody wants to say something to make a point, they will find the studies to make their point. And I will find the studies to make my point. But there's studies that show that there are significant risk. And all you have to do is work with patients to know there is. I had many women come in my office that have had blood clots from birth control. Many women who have been on birth control who literally went cray-cray being on it. So then you just have to meet the woman because anecdotal experience is real. And those women just need to speak up in terms of having those experiences so that people know.
Let's do a couple more questions.
I've kind of Googled around looking for those studies to be able to speak to that because it's really hard when someone says, well, that's stupid, I don't believe you. Do you have a good source for us to go to look?
Right. So a good source would be like Physicians for Life has a lot of the studies on birth control and the effects that are harmful. There's a good study, and I can basically just give it to you. It was written by Dr. Rebecca Pickerson that goes through the entire side effect profile very well of birth control. And let's see, I just had another one in my mind. Pharmacists for Life is another that puts all the studies there. Breastcancer.org is another one that has studies on the risks of breast cancer and its detriment to women's health. The World Health Organization and the Institute for Carcinogen, I can't think of, Agency for Research on Carcinogens classifies birth control as a class 1 carcinogen. So, I mean, that right then and there is, you know, 2 big international sources calling it a carcinogen. So again, I mean, what it comes down to is just like a risk analysis, basically. It's like, how much risk are you willing to take? When we treat, as our culture, pregnancy as the biggest threat to society, the risk analysis gets balanced pretty heavily that birth control would be okay. The other thing I would say is go watch the short short kind of part of the documentary Sweetening the Pill on YouTube, Sweetening the Pill. It's about 9 minutes long, I believe. I mean, there's a full documentary of it, but just that 9 minutes is pretty terrifying in terms of these young 20-some-year-old women just dying of blood clots, like instantly. And again, the media just doesn't report it. I think about how many women who walk into emergency rooms with a pulmonary embolus and die, and it never gets reported that that was caused by their oral contraceptive or their patch or their NuvaRing. And then the other thing is Google Yaz, birth control, and lawsuits. That's another fun one.
One more.
Can you speak a little bit about the male or husband's role in NFP? Because a lot of times the focus is shifted on the women, but there's a tremendous role that I feel like should be known by the male.
Yeah, totally tremendous role. So first of all, I was just reading this again because I think there's a blog called The Catholic Gentleman. Sam Guzman writes that. Read that blog. It's something like NFP stinks, but why you should use it anyway. Because I think that's a kind of the heart. I feel like sometimes how men, and if Dan Kenney was here, you know, he would vent a little, you know, get a little worked up about this because in a lot of respects it can be more difficult for a man, and that's how God made us as men and women. But this is truly like men's like be the hero, like be the knight in shining armor, you know. Self-denial leads to virtue. And the fact is that biologically, the way men and women are created, women, when they ovulate, that's the time they actually care about sex. The one time, you know. Particularly after you have children, the one time, you know. So the one time your wife actually wants to have sex, you know, if you're using a fertility awareness method and it's an abstinence-based situation, you're going to avoid during that time. That can be really difficult, particularly for the man. So it takes a lot of self-denial and virtue. But again, and this just goes to it, and I'll never convince anybody who believes in self-fulfillment, who believes that they're kind of the dominion of their own lives, which unfortunately in the world that we live in, it's all about that. We're all told like it's all about self-fulfillment, you know. You can do anything, you can have anything. Pleasure should be at your disposal. It's the antithesis of NFP. So it really calls men to be virtuous in a way that's so difficult, but if they live it out, you will not find a man who's doing it well that is not peaceful and joyful in that. And I'll say, people who use fertility awareness methods, they're going to have bigger families. And it's not necessarily because of the system failing, it's the nature of the heart of it, right? Because if we believe in the theology of the body, if we believe that we have an origin, a purpose, and a destiny, then we believe that eternal souls that we create and we get to participate in God with, like that's super cool. Like I created 8 people with eternal souls that are like headed up hopefully to heaven with me. Like that's amazing. And if you don't like get the awe around that, it'll never get to you. So again, if I can just plead to all of you, like delve into the theology of the body. Wipe the fog off your glasses. The experience is incredible.